Hi, everyone. Welcome to Montessori Pod. It's a podcast where we dive into the world of Montessori, exploring different topics, answering questions, and sometimes talking to professionals as well. Our team here believes in a Montessori Plus approach to education that harnesses the tenets of traditional Montessori along with technology and other skills that are necessary for learners of today to really succeed and excel tomorrow. Our goal as a team is to empower teachers and parents while providing the tools, information, and resources that they need to help their students along the way. You can learn more about us at montessoripod.org. So having said all that, I'm Laura. I'm here with Z and Berit, and we're the Montessori Pod team. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
It's fun having us all together to talk about everything. Because this is our first episode, I thought it'd be great to just dive into what Montessori is. There's a lot of thoughts out there about that, but if you were to give a brief history on Montessori and what it is, Berit, what would you start with?
I mean, there's so many resources out there. You can just Google it and learn more, but I did want to give a little bit of her history and the story so you can kind of understand the Montessori approach. So Maria Montessori, she actually started out as a physician and a scientist. She worked in a hospital with children that were sent there because they were seen as unfit or different or unable to learn. So while she was there, she studied that these children were able to learn, just no one had given them attention, no one had tried different ways of learning instead of the traditional classroom. So she was able to see that they had this skill and she was able to help them. And so they could eventually be a part of society in one way or the next. So that was a huge turning point for Maria. She realized she had such a passion for education and for learning, and as well as still having that scientific background. That's a huge part of the Montessori method as well. So based off of all of Maria's observations and her scientific approach, she started to make a name for herself, and she was asked to create a childcare center in San Lorenzo, which is a poor inner city district of Rome. If I hadn't mentioned this yet, Maria Montessori was from Italy, so that's where everything started for her. Once she was there, she started working with some of the most disadvantaged and previously unschooled children. So it was, again, these children who weren't given the time of day. So that's where her focus was. She opened her doors on January 6th, 1907, and she was determined to make quality education in an environment that was not the typical classroom that we think of or the typical classroom back then. But she started with the youngest of kids, and these kids who were thought of as being unable to learn or the poorest of kids who hadn't been given the attention. So when she first started, these children weren't the best students, again, because they hadn't been in a classroom. They didn't know what to experience. So as she started progressing, they started to show more and more interest in working with puzzles and learning to prepare meals and actually clean the environment and having these engaging hands-on experiences. So with that, Maria observed that these children started to change a little bit. They weren't as unruly. They weren't acting up. They started to know what was expected of them. They liked the sense of order. They liked the caringness of Maria that they were getting. And so with all of this, she was able to essentially teach them and start to teach them because of this environment that she created in this trusting environment that there was. She used her scientific observation.
Oops. We lost Berit first. She should be right back. For anyone listening or watching, Berit just moved into a new house, so.
Right, Berit's back. Yeah.
All right, where'd you lose me?
10 seconds ago. But no, you were talking about the changes they were beginning to see.
Okay, so with all her observations and seeing that they had been able to learn, she started to create these unique learning materials for them. Many of them we still see in the classroom today and can be purchased or built by yourself. And what she ended up being able to do was create a classroom that fostered the children's natural desire to learn and foster them in a loving and caring way, as well as allowing them to take control of their education. So that was a huge piece of it as well. And I mean, Maria started with the youngest of the children. She then worked her way up to adolescence. So if you're looking at Montessori and you're thinking that it's just for those kids who are, age 3 to 6, that's not the case. It can go all the way up through the adolescence. And there's so many materials out there as well. Is that a good enough snippet or?
No, that's wonderful. I think it's super helpful to have a foundation like that that's rooted in history. And I like that you mentioned that, it's not just for little kids. A lot of us who are parents, we think it is, but that it continues the whole way through. Z, you work in a school, and your boys are a little bit older than Berit's and my kids, and
Right.
they've gone through Montessori. From your own experience, how would you compare like where it started to where it is now?
Right. So I have a 17-year-old and an 11-year-old. So they went through, that's basically up until my oldest kids went to high school. Montessori was all they knew. And I think it works differently in different age group, right? So a couple of things I want to add on to what Berit was talking about. One is mixed age group classroom. It's very important in the Montessori philosophy. Is the idea that you learn from your older peer, and as you get into a classroom like 3 to 6, the classroom you join in at 3-year-old, you stay there until 6-year-old. So you will learn, you like look up to the older kids, and then at 6 you're the oldest one, right? So you feel like king. So every 3 years you feel like king in the classroom. So I love this a lot because this allow everybody to have a sense of leadership. In a traditional single like age group classroom, leadership is normally for those natural leaders, right? In a group of kids, you will have normal natural leaders, but there is like 2/3 of the class would never have a chance to be leaders. But in a Montessori classroom, everybody was given a chance because you're 2 years older than the other kids. You can lead them, and as they get older, right? So get back to your question. As they get older, they get more structured. They're learning more material, right? More actual content, skill set. But then that iteration, that 3-year cycle, and the leadership, it also helps a lot as they get older, as they get more philosophical, right? So math in a younger age was tactile, not tactical. Tactile math, you can touch them. As you get into middle school, you don't touch your math, but that transition still helps where they have the tactical mind in their head. Yeah. So another way to think about this is as you get older on the academic side, yes, you're no longer touching, right? So in the younger age, we call it lower elementary, 3-year-old to 6-year-old, or preschool, primary from 3-year-old to 6-year-old, you're touching everything. You're touching your math, touching your letters, touching your like when you count, you touch. When you move, you touch. It's all about tactile, all about moving. As you get older, you're not touching. It's a lot of theory, more theory. But then we get into more and more of the project-based learning, and then more and more of leadership and planning. And that's also another side of Montessori education that we do a lot, which is group projects.
Got it. So, I mean, you touched on it, Z, but I think both of you have experiences to share. Like, do you see those qualities in your own kids that the Montessori system fosters? Is that something you both feel like confident of?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. We I mean, of course, I'm a Montessori teacher. I also a Montessori parent, right? We're very proud of the Montessori way of life. Um, so we sometimes will see, oh yeah, you can tell a kid that's grow up going through Montessori. One of those attributes is helping others. It's when I remember we went to a computer coding uh, event. It's a competition. So all the kids was in a room doing coding, computer coding competition. And then during breaks, um, I was actually doing an interview in another room, and the organizer saw me and said, "Hey, so you guys are Montessori school, right?" I said, "Yeah," because our name doesn't say Montessori, right? And then I was like, "Yeah, that's good. How do you know that? Do you know us?" He said, "No, I saw your kids is helping us. They must be Montessori kids, right?" So while doing breaks, when all the other kids was having break, our kid saw the organizer need some help to like reshuffle the mouse or doing something, right? So they went in and start helping. Um, in a normal Montessori classroom, that's what you do, right? They have a sheet that goes through like jobs. They call it jobs list, and every week they have to rotate. And these jobs are regular chore, like putting chairs up or sweeping the floor or mopping, cleaning the bookshelves, right? Putting books back. Those things that, like I would say, in a normal school will be done either by the teacher or maybe by assistants, by someone else. Um, some school may say those are not education, but that's not in Montessori philosophy, right? In Montessori philosophy, living is part of education. You want to be able to live your life. And so there's a lot of life skill, cleaning, like putting dishes away, doing dishes, cooking. I mean, there's a lot of these type of skill that makes them more willing to help when they see a need. So that's one of the Montessori attributes that I see when they grow up. That's number one, and number two is the sense of self. Um, they the agency is very strong in them, and in the young age, even in primary and elementary, right? They can control what they learn from a day-to-day basis. So then that questions get into their head, like they have agency, they can think, they can, I mean, they argue. I mean, I just come back from school this morning, and I went into the classroom telling the kids to sit down in a computer. You may have to share because we don't have enough computers. And then the kids was like, well, but that's negotiable, right? Can I negotiate to not share? And after a while, like they were like, I don't want to share with you. I want to share, but I don't want to share with you. Long story short, at the end was all fine, right? But that tells you that they have amazing agency. They believe everything is negotiable. Now sometimes that gets a little bit out of hand, but most of the time it's fun.
That's amazing. I love that. Berit, how about with your girls?
I mean, a lot of what Z said, I see with the younger ones too. So my kids are both, well, one will be 2 and one will be 4, and they've both been in Montessori. And I think one of the things that I've noticed now that they've been around some other kids who aren't in Montessori is that they do have this calmness about them and this self and this value. They know that they matter. And I think sometimes when like my oldest Lila, if she's in a situation where she doesn't feel like she has as much say, especially I think lately, because we've just been moving, there's been a lot more, no, you can't do that. And just, she didn't have her normal routine of the Montessori classroom where she was able to choose and pick and really take control of her life. I see that she's changing a little bit because she is losing some of that control. She misses it. And so I think that's something that Montessori does so well, is it allows that ownership of of a voice and that ownership of what I'm doing and what I'm learning and who I am. So I mean, that's a big piece of it. My youngest, who, like I said, she's almost 2, Montessori has been great just because it's allowed her this calmness. She's feisty. Even her teachers always said that she's feisty. She would climb on top of the bookshelves. She would find her way. She has her own voice. She was born with that voice. But what the Montessori education does is it shows you again that voice is important. But let's learn some of these other things too. And by just sitting her down with Montessori activities, just like putting straws into like a cheese container, like she loved that. And it's those skills that she's learning, and she loves to learn at such a young age too. So Montessori has been huge in the upbringing of my 2 kids, and it's been so beneficial, I think.
That's, again, amazing at all points from ages 2 to 17 there. So Berit, if a parent like were interested in exploring Montessori, how would you encourage them to start?
So I think a lot of times parents steer away from Montessori for a couple different reasons. 1, they have no idea what it is. 2, they think it's going to be really expensive. And at times Montessori can be expensive with the materials if you're looking at it and you're looking to purchase all the materials. But I will say, as far as the materials, there are hacks. You can build your own. You can definitely get them for cheaper. But when it comes to actually starting Montessori in your home and in your life, it's much more than the materials. It's an organized environment. It's learning life skills through those hands-on experiences, like washing the tables, setting the table, going to the post office, even pulling weeds. Like some of those real life scenarios are very helpful in learning. Try to include your children in as much as possible. I mean, just the other day, I was outside with mulch, and at first I was thinking, oh, I don't think that they need to do this. They got their snow shovels, they were picking up the mulch and putting it in. So they love to do those things. So Montessori can start with just having those experiences and then getting those in organized environments. If you want to set up a part of your house that is Montessori, you definitely can do that. And it's just following some easy principles. And I mean, we at Montessori Pod, we can create a list for you and saying, here's what a Montessori environment looks like, and we can send that out. So if you want to do that, but the biggest piece is to just include your kid as much as possible. Always lead with peace and patience. That's huge with Montessori. I mean, a lot of what Montessori is too is understanding your child. So when they're getting upset, not yelling at them, actually sitting down and saying, hey, what is it that's upsetting you? What could we do differently? So it's a different approach with how you talk to your kid as well. So, I mean, these are just a few snippets. There's a lot more ways that you can get started, but I think a lot of it is just changing your outlook and changing your mindset. And then eventually you can start the materials and the environment as well.
Well, and I think that's so different from what we see today. Like, I think maybe just a couple generations ago, kids were expected to help with things and they were given the opportunity to step into those things. But today, as parents, it's easier to just keep them out of it, give them a video game and have them sit quietly while you handle whatever you're dealing with in life. And that might be a huge disservice that Montessori really helps answer. That's awesome.
And I kind of want to go back a little bit because we were talking about what Montessori is. And I mean, Z mentioned about the mixed age group, which is really helpful. But I was also I have an educational background, and I was a teacher, and I taught for 3 years on the South Side of Chicago. I taught 3rd graders. I was not teaching Montessori. And I can tell you from now learning more about Montessori and being a part of it and seeing it in my kids, I wish I was teaching Montessori, because in the traditional classroom, a lot of it is functioned by the clock. Your day is go, go, go. Let's do the next activity. It's also functioned by what the teacher is control of. So the teacher designs what is being discussed today, what math level is everyone on. And because of that, a lot of times students get left behind or just are always feeling rushed. And with Montessori, the kid is choosing what they want to work on, and there's that passion for learning. And so because of that, I think that also changes the outlook. So when you're at home, try not to rush through the activities. Let your child choose what they want to be a part of and what they don't want to be a part of. And if they don't want to help you spread the mulch, don't force them to spread the mulch. Find something else that they could be doing that's also helpful. Also, with something that I found that was different from when I was in the classroom teaching versus the Montessori, is that with Montessori, such a large focus is on the universe. You're focusing on how the universe started. You're focusing on where the world is today and what's actually going on in the world. And then it's also focused on what can we do to better the future. And so I think if you take that approach at home as well, like constantly telling your kids of how things used to be or how things started, how the universe started. And also like, here's how we're going to recycle. This is really important to recycle because it's going to create materials for other projects or things like that, and just reusing. So I don't know. I just wanted to point some of those pieces out because I think those are just really helpful to know and also to move forward building at home. And before anyone else says anything, I thought of one more thing I wanted to mention. Montessori also huge on being out in nature and that is one thing that when you're in that traditional classroom, there's like probably 30 minutes that the kids are outside. Montessori, you could have a whole afternoon with the kids outside. And so if you're trying to have more of a Montessori home life, let your kids out if you can. Just let them go play for an hour, 2 hours, however long they want to be outside. Don't limit that. Just get them out there. Let them look at the tree bark, pull a stick apart, and just sit down for a while. I mean, that's huge. So have them listen to the noises that they hear. Like there's just a lot that they can do. Have them create a nature journal. So there's so many ways to bring Montessori into your home. And if you do have a kid who's in that traditional school system and you want more Montessori, try to bring some of these aspects into your home.
I think that's so amazing. Those are all qualities we want for our kids. And they're things that a lot of us feel like are kind of lost, and it's bringing them back.
Right. So I want to point out, just follow up on Berit, a little bit on the unstructured playtime. So I remember when they're younger, teachers will specifically say, make sure they have 2 to 3 hours of unstructured playtime. Now, unstructured means they're not in front of a computer, not playing video game, not necessarily playing board game, not playing games or predefined activities. So this should be unstructured, like playing dirt. So my kids would play with cardboards. So we have a room, like basically just cardboards, and they would just cardboards and duct tapes, right? So with that creativity shine. And even now that they're older, sometimes when they need something, they go back to the room and find cardboards and to make something, right? So that is an important part of Montessori education that some people didn't relate that into Montessori, but that is part of it. It's the unstructured playtime, and to draw out your creativity. Partially could be outdoor by the nature, and it could also be indoor.
And if you're in if you have those younger kids, a lot of times learning's done in the morning and the afternoon's just out in nature. So that's really with the Montessori mindset, that let's do some those centers in the morning, and then after lunch.
Oops. After lunch, right. After lunch, we'll just go out to play.
She checked out early. No, she's back.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So okay. After lunch, have your nap and then go out and play.
Right.
Awesome. I know we have so many topics that we're going to dive into as we keep going on this, but Just to close out this one, we talked about Maria Montessori, why Montessori was started, and we talked about like where it is today in a very general, broad sense. But if you guys could just answer, what do you think Maria Montessori would think of where Montessori is today? Not both at once. Z.
Right. I always say if she's alive today, she will be running the maker movement, and we can talk about the maker movement more in another episode. And the maker movement, STEM education, right? All of those just overlap with Montessori thinking. Now, even though she never had computer, never had like circuits, like all of that, but that the hands-on, the agency, the group projects, the life skills are all part of Montessori. So I always imagine if it's alive today, she will like it probably may not be calling Montessori method anymore because she will be running the maker movement, or maybe called Montessori, right? So that's what I think will happen.
Awesome. Berit?
I mean, just with what Z said, I think she would be a part of, she wouldn't be back like back when she started. She built this foundation, but she wanted it to be up and running and not stay in history. So I think she would move forward and move with technology and constantly push the boundaries of giving more to the children to learn at when age appropriate, of course, because limiting what you're giving the children is limiting what they're going to get out of it. And so I think she would be open to every new avenue and trying to bring it in her classroom.
That's awesome. This was great, guys. Thank you both. I really look forward to the topics that we can dive into from here. So have a good one.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.